when clearly there is a love triangle dynamic that is present in Final Fantasy VII. It's just incredibly odd that you would have a thumbnail with why Cloti Is Canon jumping out at everyone and just completely disregarding everything else that would need to be addressed in order to make that claim. What is up? It's mlwjrpg, and this will be a react video. Over time, many of you have asked me to do more of these types of videos. One I've been asked about often is this one right here. The importance of Cloud and Tifa's relationship. And the thumbnail says why Cloti Is Canon. I was cool with the video's title, but the thumbnail, that's not the move necessarily, Xander. And already it gives me an idea of what to expect. But I go into these videos with an open mind, so let's hop right into it.
So, you know Tifa, right? It's not really my business, but are you guys close?
You have no idea. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been my most anticipated game since Remake. Even with every hour I spent marinating in sewage, every water filter I was forced to sell, every attempt I had on that impossible timing minigame, the characters doing the chores alongside me made it all worth it. Like, it takes a special type of game to make climbing 59 floors of stairs something I look forward to.
This sucks! I want to go back!
So after making Rebirth my life for a good 4 days, I'm happy to report that Remake's strength and characterization is one that absolutely carries over to the sequel. Every single party member feels like they genuinely earn their spot in this squad. Red 13 finally gets his backstory and trial. Yuffie actually has plot relevance now. Barrett and Dyne had me bawling all over again. Aerith is Aerith, and Tate Sith, I mean, he rolls around, that's pretty funny. But the stars of the show, rightfully so, are the Nibelheim sweethearts themselves. Cloud and Tifa are the core of Final Fantasy VII in a lot of ways. I mean,
Cloud and Tifa are the core of FF7 in many ways. Yeah, Cloud is the core, of course, but I wouldn't say Tifa should be included in that. Cloud, Aerith, and Sephiroth would be considered the core of Final Fantasy VII.
I mean, the grand twist everything in the narrative was building to is this mind-bending mystery that's only solvable by their shared memories and collaboration. Of course, this chapter of the Remake project doesn't cover those late OG moments just yet, but Square gives us so much additional foreshadowing that will endow those beats in Part 3 with a fresh weight. Whether it was a nail-biting dissection of the past or just some really cute banter, my eyes were glued to the screen through every interaction of theirs, which there are a lot of. So here's your usual spoiler warning.
A lot of scenes between Cloud and Tifa in Rebirth. I'm not so sure about that. Let me think about this. We had the calm scene in Chapter 2, the Junon Inn conversation in Chapter 4, then there was the Gongaga sequence toward the end of Chapter 9, of course, and the 2 scenes in Nibelheim that happened during Chapter 11. And these are the only non-optional scenes between the two. That's totaling only 5. I wouldn't say that was a lot.
For the original FF7, Remake, and Rebirth, and let's get on with the show. Cloud and Tifa's relationship can be summed up with the following visual metaphor. Up here is Cloud's sanity, down here is Cloud, and this little thread in the middle holding everything together, that's Tifa. Meanwhile, Sephiroth's up to the side with his 8-foot sword staring everyone.
Okay, wait. This visual metaphor you're showing here implies that only Tifa is the reason Cloud is sane. I'm actually legit confused by this because throughout Final Fantasy VII, multiple party members assist with Cloud's quote-unquote sanity.
Has been true since 1997, and 27 years later, it's more compelling than it ever has been. Why is that though? Well, first and foremost, this game has a lot of cutscenes. Like, I could watch this or Killers of the Flower Moon 3 times. The slower pacing has proved itself to be a fairly contentious choice, and while Midgar was stretched pretty darn thin, Rebirth covers a lot more ground and progresses at a pace that allows you to grow attached to your friends and world without feeling like you're not getting anywhere. There are so many thoroughly reimagined areas and towns in this game, and every time you reach a new one, guess you get a scene with. Before we get into any of that crazy Sephiroth stuff, let's start a little bit more granular. These two get significantly more one-on-one moments than any other character combo, and they were always something to look forward to. I think
These two get more significant one-on-one screen time than any other character combo? Are you sure about that? Did we play the same version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? I don't think we did. I already know this is objectively wrong. I showcased some of this in one of my past videos. Check that out if you haven't already. Cloud and Aerith easily get the most one-on-one screen time in Rebirth. Let's talk about mandatory only, because if we really get into all the optional content, it's going to be quite unfair. In Chapter 1, there is the moment during the flashback when Sephiroth attacked Tifa, which is 1 minute and 30 seconds. In Chapter 2, the clock tower date is 2 minutes 30 seconds. In Chapter 4, the Junon Inn conversation is about 3 minutes. In Chapter 5, Cloud meets up with Tifa and they head deep into the ship fighting battles until they meet up with Barrett and Yuffie. This time varies per player, but it can be done in about 5 minutes or less, and there's a bunch of cutscenes weaved in between between, for example, with Hojo and the captain of the ship. So it's really messy there. In chapter 9, in front of Zack's house with Cloud and Aerith, the conversation is about 1 minute and 45 seconds, and the Gongaga conversation with Cloud and Tifa in Cessny's room is 3 minutes. Chapter 11, the water tower scene is 3 minutes. The first Nibelheim scene with Cloud and Tifa is about 1 minute and 30 seconds, and the second one is about 30 seconds. Chapter 14, well, I'm not even going to list out the times here because it's really going to make poor Tifa look bad in one-on-one screen time.
Always something to look forward to. I think they genuinely cut my exploration a bit short because I'd be rushing to the next end for that sweet, sweet character development. Calm, boom. Junon, boom. Gongaga, boom. Nibelheim, quintuple boom. Throughout it all, the writers do such a fantastic job with character verisimilitude, accomplishing this delicate balance of Cloud learning to be vulnerable about his identity while Tifa gathers her bearings about what happened 5 years ago. The mutual wrestling of their trauma is handled with this delicate empathy that forces the player to have the same respect for the predicament that the writers do. You don't just hope they figure things out, they get you actively invested in the arduous process of these two seeking catharsis out of the enigmatic. This is all perfect.
You mentioned that the player doesn't only hope they figure things out, but the player actively wants to get involved with it. I mean, maybe, but not really. Here's what I mean. If we actually saw progress being made outside of their shared trauma, then sure, it would be interesting to see how it pans out. But the problem is, the trauma they share is what holds them together, and building on any foundation that has nothing to do with the trauma is, well, to be quite frank, non-existent. It always feels as if there is a negative tension in most of their one-to-one interactions, and it always seems as if they are taking steps backwards. Sometimes they take a few steps forward. For an example, in Gongaga, I'm sure you'll discuss that scene in this video at some point, and if it does, I'll talk about that when the time comes. This is put on full display at the start of the game when Tifa lashes out at Cloud and questions him for not being there for her whilst everyone else was when she got injured. And then she had the nerve to gaslight him further right here.
I thought we could just pick up where we left off, like nothing had changed. But I guess I was wrong.
Guess so.
I was so happy to see you again, but maybe I shouldn't have been.
Well, there you have it right there. This example, along with many others, I won't bring up right now so this video doesn't go on forever, actually demotivates a player to hope they figure it out.
They preface with their talk after the calm flashback. For those who don't know, Cloud isn't exactly all peaches and cream in the head. 7 years ago, Sephiroth burned down his hometown, killing his mother, Tifa's father, and nearly Tifa as well. If that trauma alone wasn't enough, he and soldier Zack Fair are found in the aftermath by Shinra scientists and have numerous experiments performed on them. They are eventually discarded and put into cryosleep for 4 years, until Zack manages to break out and drag Cloud's mostly lifeless body all the way back to Midgar. Right at the tail end of their trek, however, Zack is killed by a small army of Shinra soldiers, and in his dying words, entrusts Cloud with the Buster Sword to carry on his legacy. Due to the combination of everything that happened at Nibelheim, all the Mako poisoning and Genova cells breaking down his mind and body, as well as Zack's recent passing, Cloud subliminally rewrites his memories to omit all the pain. In this new narrative, he was the cool first-class soldier that went on the mission with Sephiroth, and in taking Zack's place, he forgets his existence entirely.
What did you say his name was?
Zack. Zack Fair.
Zack? Sorry. No.
So when he tells this absurd fanfiction at Calm, Tifa's losing her mind because this isn't what she remembers at all. When she confronts him, asking him where he's been the past 5 years, he can't answer because he genuinely doesn't know. We get this conversation pretty early on in Rebirth, before we even get to play as the current party. Its placement here is not arbitrary. It's the writers grabbing you by the shoulder saying, listen up, these two are what our story's about, and we're gonna get you to care about them.
The writers' intentions were not to say, hey, this game is about Cloud and Tifa only. Cloud just finished telling the story about Nibelheim and Sephiroth. The emphasis on Sephiroth, as the party didn't know much about him. Considering what just happened at the end of Remake, rolling into Rebirth, they are trying to figure out Sephiroth's plans and how to pursue him. When you click New Game, it did not start with Cloud and Tifa on the Calm Inn rooftop.
Tifa is the only one who knows the real Cloud. She knows he's really this—
Wait. Tifa is the only one who knows the real Cloud? How is this the case? Look at the scene you just showed. Is that Tifa knowing who the real Cloud is? There is another character that has more intuition when it comes to the real Cloud.
But forget about him for now. Just focus on yourself, okay?
But I'm fine.
Focus on you, Cloud. The one I've been trying to find. The real you.
Country boy and can easily identify the edgy facade. Still, she knows the issue is more complex than Cloud just being a jerk to be a jerk. There's some underlying baggage here that stops her from jumping to conclusions, so she gives him time and scopes out the problem. By the time we reach Junon, it's evident there's a clear direction of recuperation with each of these scenes. Cloud apologizes for what happens at Calm, and they both acknowledge that their dilemma is not something that's going to be resolved overnight.
I should have never doubted you.
It's fine. I never should have doubted you either.
With all the blame they might have harbored against each other removed from the room, this scene is them strapping in for the long run together. Since Calm, they've both adjusted their expectations, now mutually accepting that the trauma of the past is something that will take ages to mend. They aren't expecting any immediate answers, but have both committed to actively working on the relationship when time...
You're not kidding about it taking ages to resolve that trauma. More like a lifetime from what we've seen from them.
allows it.
We'll find time to talk. Just the two of us. Figure things out.
Just be ready to spill your guts, huh?
With my iron stomach?
The important thing is that with each interaction, we see them developing a safe space in each other's presence. Those awkward moments of silence are shrinking by the minute.
Also, I notice you're conveniently omitting much of the dialogue in the scene. You mentioned earlier that Tifa is giving Cloud time. Well, that's odd because this happens during their chat in the Junon Inn.
Was this another test?
No, it wasn't. Why deny it? I guess it was, huh? I'm sorry.
Nice, Tifa. Way to give Cloud some time here. Let's just go ahead and test him some more, huh?
Grounding the humanity of these characters in this grand fantasy world. Sure, slaying dragons is just another day at the office for them, but at their core, they're just a couple of country kids desperately trying to make sense of a convoluted tragedy. Also, side note, I think it's really adorable how right after Tifa tells him to be ready to spill his guts, he goes back to his room and starts doing sit-ups, so I respect the grind. The next time the two genuinely...
Yeah, I gotta give that part to you. I'm glad you pointed it out. I did like how that scene ended there, that little conversation there. I thought it was pretty cool. And then, yeah, Cloud going in there, getting the grind done. Me, I'm a gym rat myself. Of course, I know all about that grind, Cloud. Keep at it, man. That's how you have that amazing six-pack.
And talk moment is in Gongaga, and holy cow, is this scene a treat and a half. As opposed to Cloud's more spontaneous engagement with the previous conversations, we witness this newfound intentionality without any words. After the incident at the reactor, he patiently waits at Tifa's bedside to ensure she'll be okay. When she wakes, we see Cloud at his most vulnerable yet.
Sometimes, I don't even know who I am. I forget things everyone else remembers just fine. And know things I've got no right knowing. It's like there's different people inside of me. And the worst part is, I can't even tell where they end and I begin.
Go on.
Soldier cells degrade. I think that's what's happening to me. That I'm falling apart.
This is a massive deal. Cloud is finally beginning to put the pieces together and it terrifies him. He's actually noticing the holes in his memory, and rather than it being this huge lore dump towards the end of the game, like in the original, it's this gradual festering insecurity beating his self-worth to a pulp. This is what I mean when I say Tifa's the only thing keeping him from fully losing his marbles. Notice
I'm not a fan of this trend of making Tifa out to be the only one holding Cloud together and keeping him on track. Did you even see these scenes here in Rebirth?
Have your fun. While you still have time.
Hey. Maybe you should lie down for a bit.
Aaron!
Tifa does her part in helping Cloud keep his composure in certain spots in the game, but you're completely disregarding the many times that Aerith plays this part as well, at least so far in this video. Maybe it changes later on, but to be honest, I doubt it. I don't have any hope for that. You've established that this video is likely going to be disingenuous throughout.
this confession to any other character. It's for Tifa's ears only. He knows he can trust her and only her with a fear as egregious as cellular decay to the point of being a mindless, robed follower of Genova. Why? Because Because Tifa's a damn good listener with the patience of a saint. When Cloud is breaking down his condition, she doesn't poke, prod, or pressure, but lets him get the weight off his chest without any judgment. She is the one safety net he's got, the only person to remind him that he is a hero. Back in their youth.
Ah, yes. Here we go. The classic hero. I don't do this too often, but let me butter up Tifa here for a bit before I get to this hero concept. Tifa's journey is a testament to her strength as an independent woman. Yes, she can be that. We saw this in Traces of Two Past, where she faced and overcame difficult times, learning to carry herself with dignity and rebuild her life from scratch basically. She can do it. She has the capability of this. But it's always so odd to see her with these strong characteristics, while suddenly when it comes to Cloud, she is forced into this role of being that damsel in distress, needing a hero, which obviously it's Tifa, come on now, she clearly does not need a hero. This, in turn, forces Cloud to think he has to fill this hero role, that first-class soldier who has to save her. Tifa and Cloud himself force this upon him, while at the same time he's trying to figure out who he really is deep down inside. It's as if there's so many variables in play here, and that is one of the root causes of why when they communicate, it seems that sometimes they can take a couple steps forward, but most of the time they are taking steps backward, and they're always on that same footing, that same ground, and it's almost as if nothing ever progresses.
Tifa's mother passed away when she was just 8. In her mourning, she turned to the legend that her mother's spirit had gone to the local Mount Nibel, and thus made the dangerous trek in hopes of seeing her one last time. Most of her friends abandoned her halfway up the mountain, but not Cloud. Despite carrying the blame for her injury that day, Cloud was the only one who was there for her, something she's sure to remind him of.
They said that you egged me on. But now I know that's not what happened at all. When the rest of them ran, you were there for me. You stayed when I needed you most. If that's not a hero, then I don't know what is.
Especially considering the fact that Cloud joined Soldier with the sole reason being to impress Tifa. Her validation.
Oh boy, that's quite odd. Tifa was the sole reason that Cloud joined Soldier. How about look at the fact that Cloud was a loner and outcast. He had motivation to join Soldier because he wanted to be accepted by Tifa and the others in the village. He wanted nothing more than to feel acknowledged and noticed instead of feeling invisible to everyone else. Tifa and her gang never invited Cloud to hang out with them. He wanted nothing more than to be able to join them.
Here's not something he's just gonna brush off. He values her advice more than anybody because he knows Tifa cares about him more than anybody. But we are just getting started, because up next is our trip back to Nibelheim. It's already a pretty haunting visit in the original game, but like it does with everything, Rebirth doubles down on that uncomfortable tone. Tifa and Cloud return bracing for the impact of seeing the aftermath of the worst night of their lives, only to everyone's surprise, find out the village is in perfect condition. Turns out Shinra swooped in and rebuilt the entire village, even hiring actors to play new residents, all to cover up that fateful tragedy 5 years ago.
Because now I know they rebuilt everything. Tried to sweep what they did under the rug and pretend it never even happened. But I won't let them. I can't. Sephiroth and his cruelty. Shinra and their lies. I'm sick of all of it.
This lazy piece of history is one that effectively sets the stage for their not-so-welcoming homecoming. They are both faced with awful memory after awful memory, with each other being their only shoulders to lean on. This has been true since...
It's funny because at the start of this video, you mentioned all the other party members, but now as you've progressed through the video and you're talking about Cloud and Tifa's relationship, you're talking about it as if the other party members just don't even exist. They're not even there. It's funny because in Nibelheim here, you mentioned that they only had each other's shoulders to lean on only. I mean, there's constant times, even before that, where all the other party members have to help out Cloud and Tifa as well. Oddly enough, in Nibelheim, that was one of the first things that Aerith did, was she intended to put Cloud at ease and make him feel secure about their return to Nibelheim. That's exactly why the water tower scene played out between those two there.
Remake, but every single time Cloud's having one of his little Mako flashback headaches, Tifa's always been there comforting him like he just woke up from a bad dream. She's so darn
nice. Again, we're playing this as if Tifa is the only one that hops in when Cloud has an episode. And here you're mentioning ever since Remake. Well, let me refresh your memory here. Let's go back to Remake and see who else does that.
The reunion. Is the nothing to fear?
Cloud, get it together. Come on.
darn consistent that I got to the point where I was just waiting for her hands to move into frame. Sephiroth!
Zoom, Cloud. Zoom.
Okay, Tifa, that's your cue. Let's go, man, without fail. Now, this is something I preach every time I cover romance on this channel, and that's mutualistic symbiosis, bro. Shout out to my 5th grade science teacher. Even someone as altruistic as Tifa has her limits. Somersault, dolphin blow, final head. Cloud has got to at least try and meet her halfway. And despite being so mentally broken and barely knowing who he is, he still never hesitates to extend his hand back to Tifa. There's this stellar scene where they're exploring the Mako reactor once again, and Tifa sees a deceased man in the same spot her father fell to Sephiroth. It is a horrific gut punch she was not emotionally prepared for, but Cloud is there to bear the burden with her.
I'm okay.
It's a beautiful exchange because their actions do all the storytelling. Tifa's hyperventilating, immediately being cured upon a reminder of Cloud's presence is all the confirmation we need as to how much stronger they make each other. There's this lovely quiet moment at Tifa's home where she reaffirms this very notion. Though she previously managed her grief by morphing it into indignation, over time it would fizzle out, leaving her with nothing but terror. It was Cloud's return that restored a lot of her lost tenacity to fight for justice and put Sephiroth in his place. But let me reiterate that the writers are careful not to tie up every loose end, which is a fantastic move because there's
Even after recently discovering Cloud after all those years back in Midgar, Tifa wasn't exactly fully on board to fight for justice, or she instantly had this switch where she was reinvigorated just because of Cloud. She consistently shows that she isn't entirely sure what she's fighting for, and she has shown hesitation. She did so before the bombing mission back in Midgar with Cloud and Barrett.
Tifa will be joining us too, but I don't know. Even a blind man can see her heart's not in it. She was never on board with the bombings, so if it comes down to do or die, if I've got to put my life in someone else's hands, then I'd rather that someone was a professional, like you.
I heard you're having second thoughts.
I know we have to think big if we're going to make a difference. But not like this. I feel trapped.
And also when Sung and Shinra took in Aerith, Cloud wanted nothing more than to go and rescue Aerith without question at all, while Tifa had some reservations to doing this.
You're not planning anything, are you? Don't make things worse than they already are. If I lost her too, I don't know if I could ever. Just don't.
Cloud, maybe she's right about this. Maybe they'll let Aerith go when it's all over. Maybe we'd be better off waiting a little while.
But let me reiterate that the writers are careful not to tie up every loose end, which is a fantastic move because there's still one more chapter to this story. Cloud and Tifa are far from polishing every rough edge of their trauma, and the rest of the ride isn't going to be silky smooth all of a sudden. One of the trickiest balancing acts the writers face with when utilizing the hero's journey plot structure is the time between crossing the threshold and the resurrection. So, most of the story. But this window in particular is when the actual arc part of your character arc is going down, meanwhile the rising action is ramping up right alongside it. So you have to simultaneously convey that the protagonist is growing into new strengths, while also convincing the player that they are in the most danger they've been in yet. So how does Rebirth accomplish this?
Yep, you are fitting now.
Zack Fair.
Dude, I jumped out of my chair. In the original game, Cloud does not remember Zack in any capacity until Sephiroth tells him his twisted version of the tale. He and Tifa also don't talk about Zack until it's time to pick up the pieces. But in this story revision, the future blow is sharpened while still developing Cloud. Let's make it clear that he does not remember Zack in his entirety. Cloud is aware he existed, but thinks he was nothing more than an infantryman who died in the rapids. It's essentially 1 step forward, 5 steps back.
That perfectly describes their relationship, by the way.
When he tells Tifa, she doesn't show it, but we know she's losing her marbles. Because genuinely, what do you do in her situation? You either dump it all on him in the middle of a mission taking place in the most traumatizing location they know, or assure him of his progress for the time being and slowly break down the ugly truth in a digestible way down the line. She ends up choosing the latter.
Degradation. It's hollowing me out, bit by bit.
You're wrong. You remember, Cloud. It'll be okay. It will. I know it.
Thanks.
It is because they're—
By the way, this scene shows Tifa's humanity and that she is flawed, and that is 100% okay. I know there is good intent in her and an ulterior motive for lying to Cloud, and for plot purposes later, of course. But regardless, keeping the truth from whom it may concern is generally never a good idea. It's a complicated situation, but I think she made a bad judgment call here.
The road to a healthy peace of mind is so rocky that seeing it develop is so intriguing. I cannot overstate just how darn impressive it is to achieve this nearly impossible blend of progress and terror. It truly is their relationship that gives this story its element of human authenticity. The writers take the time to properly deepen their relationship with scene after scene, and so we can't help but be proud of how far they've come. But now we're invested and vulnerable.
What is all this progress that they've made? I don't get it. Every scene between Cloud and Tifa revolves around them talking about their past, or it's referenced in some way. Progress would be moving past this, but this never happens. No improvements outside of it. Maybe a very minor one here and there. They never talk about anything outside of their past or trauma. Hello, they've been on a long journey alongside the other party members. There are tons of other things to bring up and talk about and build a relationship upon, but no, it always turns back to their past.
And that's quickly taken advantage of as everything they've built is put in jeopardy, and I think it's time we talk about that graphic from earlier. We've mostly established this bit, but there's also this variable over here, which is a tad problematic.
Naturally formed materia. And look at the size of it. Astounding. For the Mako energy to condense into something like this, it must have taken an eternity.
Naturally formed materia. And look at the size of it. Astounding. For the Mako energy to condense into something like this, it must have taken an eternity.
So Sephiroth is like the boogeyman in these games. It's never a good thing when he shows up, and that's unfortunate because he shows up a lot. Taking a stroll down the street, he's there. Checking on the next door neighbor, he's there. Look down the hall, he's there. Go to the pantry to grab some cereal, you best believe he's found a way in there. So what's the point of all his clowning? Frankly, you will go insane if you try to decipher every single line of his, because so many of them are just cryptic for the sake of being cryptic. There are loads of nuances that I'll let the dude handle, but most of this can be
Nice. Defaulting some theory crafting to max, dude. Okay. That's interesting.
generalized to Sephiroth just playing with his food. It's pretty clear that this is not the same old Sephiroth from the original timeline. He knows how everything's supposed to play out. He played the original FF7 on his PS1, and I don't think he liked the ending very much. So this is effectively a post-loss Sephiroth who has gone back in time to enact a revised machination and ensure his victory. In the original game, he got really darn close. If Cloud and his friends didn't interrupt him from holding back Aerith's holy, then
Now, I'm not going to touch too much on Xander's theory crafting here about Sephiroth. There's a lot of theories and there's a lot of angles that can go with. But the reason why I stopped right here is because you mentioned Aerith. And now that I'm really thinking about this, here we are about 18 minutes into the video, and I think you only mentioned Aerith once, and that was at the start, and you didn't have much to say about her. You said a couple things about the other party members, but you were like, Aerith is just Aerith. And it's weird because yes, your video is titled The Importance of Cloud and Tifa's Relationship, which is cool. That's what, you know, we expect to hear about. But your thumbnail was why Cloti is canon. So if you are going to really make a bold statement of that nature and you don't mention Aerith at many points at all. Again, as I said, this is the second time, and you haven't mentioned or referenced anything about Cloud and Aerith's relationship for that matter, or anyone else's relationship at all, when clearly there is a love triangle dynamic that is present in Final Fantasy VII. It's just incredibly odd that you would have a thumbnail with why Cloti is canon, jumping out at everyone, and just completely disregarding everything else that would need to be addressed in order to make that claim.
of course already tried to remove Cloud from the equation prior by revealing his own mind-bending fanfiction of his past, and that was pretty effective. I mean, the poor guy stuck to a wheelchair for like half of the final act. But who was the sole reason Cloud was finally able to piece his identity together and save the world? Like I touched on earlier, another superb function of Cloud and Tifa's relationship in Rebirth is serving as a gradual drip feeding towards the imperative memory restoration process that we'll see recreated in the final game. Since we're given so much setup, the actual payoff of Tifa going into Cloud's mind and giving him a therapy session will be 20 times sweeter because it's an issue they've been actively working on, reaching its cathartic resolution. Her memories and relationship with Cloud was the only cure for his shattered mental state. and now Sephiroth knows this. If it was not for Tifa in the original game, Sephiroth would have won. So when you went back—
It's all Tifa, right? Tifa is the sole reason for this and that. Again, you were going on and really just trying to take this game and place its emphasis solely on Tifa. Tifa was the only reason that Sephiroth did not win. Again, I don't know, did we play the same Final Fantasy VII? I'm pretty sure there were several other party members that all had huge impact in the game, that all contributed towards thwarting Sephiroth's plans in the end, and also in the re-trilogy, they are following that same beat as well. Did Tifa have a big impact in this? Yes, she did. If she wasn't present, things could have went differently, but you could say the same thing for any of the other characters too as well. This was a party effort. This was not a Tifa effort. And most importantly, Cloud, Strife, the main protagonist.
To the drawing board for attempts 2, he wrote up a new list of priorities with Tifa at the top. Because without her, Cloud stays in the wheelchair, never gets his memory restored, and never stops Sephiroth. Simple as that. So how come Tifa isn't dead yet? Well, the answer is he's working on it. He could just skewer her all Aerith style, but that's—
Of course. I think it was, I don't know, I think I just mentioned it literally probably about 4 or 5 minutes ago, how you never mentioned Aerith. But a few times. But of course, one of the times that you do mention her and maybe spend a little bit of extra seconds on her, it has to be in a way to belittle her death. That's all I'll say about this. Let's just move on.
It's not enough. The guy is obviously a narcissist, but also a little bit of a gambler.
You know that I killed her. So, who is she? Cloud. Don't let her fool you. Do not be deceived. You know the truth. Trust in me, Cloud. Don't let her fool you. She has no scar.
I have no scar.
She's not
You're not Tifa. You can't be.
The first few times he was rambling about Tifa being a decoy or whatever did have me a little bit concerned, but then it clicked for me. Tifa is not Genova. Sephiroth is just lying through his teeth. He does this in the original game to screw with Cloud, and now he's doing it again. The dude is a snake, just look at his eyes. But with this Tifa imposter narrative, combined with his ability to control Cloud's actual Genova cells, maybe, just maybe, he'll get Cloud to do his deed for him. Imagine how much harder it would hit Cloud if Tifa died by his own hand rather than Sephiroth. He would never be able to forgive himself. And frankly, I think the guy would just break on the spot, which very nearly happens in Rebirth. Tifa and Sephiroth are like the angel and devil on Cloud's shoulders. In this scene, literally so. And for a fleeting moment, the devil takes the reins and nearly undoes all of Tifa's work. As soon as Cloud snaps out of his trance and realizes what he just did, he instantly drowns in contrition. For a moment, he reverts back to that catatonic—
This is incredibly odd as well. What I'm gathering from this last bit here is you are trying to insinuate that Sephiroth's grand plans in the re-trilogy is to oust Tifa. And when this happens, that Cloud is just gonna lose it and completely break. And we see, of course, this scene in Gongaga here where Cloud, the infamous Tifa!
Tifa!
I know that scene's not supposed to be funny, but it's silly every time I see it. Was that Cloud losing it, giving up hope and the will to fight on? I don't think so, but I do know something that happens in this game a little bit later that shows that in spades.
Aerith!
Don't wait. Your tears are empty. Just like you.
Cloud, it's okay.
Aerith.
Reverts back to that catatonic state Zack nursed him through, one that's only remedied upon the news that Tifa is still alive.
Hey, get your shit together. Tifa needs you.
Meanwhile, Tifa's swimming around in the Lifestream and Sephiroth attempts to finish her off, which still fits into our theory from before because if Tifa died here, Cloud would still blame himself. But he misses, so I guess he didn't spend too much time on the 7th heaven dartboard. The focus on Cloud and Tifa's relationship in Rebirth serves as such a compelling setup for part 3. The writers are weaponizing your knowledge of the characters to develop tension, and it's got me at the edge of my seat. Say what you want about the pacing, but there is so much here that's just objectively more well written. They've added brand new setups and payoffs, smoothed out character arcs that were more like character 90-degree angles before, all to below the stakes past the stratosphere, which I do believe to be the primary function of these story changes. I do not think the writer's goal is to undermine the themes of the original game for shock value, but instead double down on them. Before Rebirth, everyone thought Aerith might live this time. That wasn't the case, but the possibility of it was gripping.
Actually, I believe that's even more so the case now that Rebirth is over, and I would love to hear the reason why you think that isn't the case anymore. We have tons of evidence that was presented to us within game to show that there's very much a chance that Aerith is alive. There is evidence to show that possibly she could be dead, but it all boils down to Aerith's fate is up in the air. There's no confirmation of her being dead, as you were trying to just brush it off as here in this video, of course. And yes, there's no confirmation of her being alive, and very much so outside of the game. Post Rebirth, there have been tons of dev interviews and events that they've attended. Katase and Hamaguchi specifically have, they've been going all over the place. Those guys are crazy, but they have all hinted towards Aerith's fate is up in the air. There's no confirmation either way.
Stuff with Zack isn't retconning any major events, but bringing more gravity to the ones we already know. The main message of Final Fantasy VII is to embrace your true identity and all the thorns that come with it. The scars of the past may never leave who we are, but they can be turned into strengths rather than handicap us as weaknesses. Cloud and Tifa are the main vessels in which the writers convey this theme, and by killing Tifa off and leaving Cloud broken, they would be actively rejecting the original game's message, which I can't imagine is their intention. Because if they do overcome their trauma and use it to defeat a wiser Sephiroth against all odds, that would actually be enhancing the message. So I don't know much about what I'll be doing 3 to 4 years from now, except for the fact that my jaw will be on the floor as I help a comatose Cloud learn who he is again as protagonist of Game 3, Tifa Lockhart.
Protagonist of Game 3, Tifa Lockhart. Oh man, my boy's looking forward to Tifa Fantasy 7 Part 3, I guess, not Final Fantasy 7 Part 3.
Blue sky.
Okay, this looks like it's a GMV edit, so I'm not gonna sit through this, but if anyone is interested, there is a link to his video in the description. How do I summarize this reaction? There's much to say, but let's summarize. First, I'll say this. Tifa is not the main character of Final Fantasy VII. This shouldn't be breaking news to anyone. She never has been, and she never is as far as I'm concerned. Cloud Strife is the main protagonist. And no, not you, Zack.
Me? Gongaga.
You shouldn't be that either, or are you a better character than Cloud? Sorry. Cloud and Tifa's relationship is very important to Final Fantasy VII. I truly believe that, and I would argue for that as well, but for different reasons. But Cloud's relationships with other party members are just as important or more important. Why do you think, for an example, Cloud and Aerith got so much screen time together in Re-Trilogy and have tons of references and callbacks to their time spent together and their many dates? Why are Cloud and Tifa never officially canonized by any non-optional sequence in the game or by any dev? Well, I think it's pretty clear to see. And by the way, for the record, I believe there could be something that could develop many years post Dirge of Cerberus, but at that point, they are still listed as childhood friends, which goes back to what I said multiple times as I was watching your video. Where is the progress? There is always a couple steps forward, possibly, but there's always massive steps backwards. And also, Xander, I don't think he's a bad guy at all. No one hop on this guy. He's really cool. I actually believe the video was well made. Now, as far as the information and how that was communicated, it was disingenuous, man. I can't defend you there. But as far as the video production process and all that, it's well put together. The cosplays were great. I love how you edit yourself into the actual game footage. That was pretty cool and enjoyable. But I have to say, Xander, it's so annoying that this video was presented in a way to where you simply just try to explain away the plot without talking about Aerith's part in it, and you're also talking about relationships within the game. You are hinting, now I know the title of your video is just the importance of Cloud and Tifa, but again, as I said, your thumbnail says why Cloti is canon. So you are essentially saying, hey, this is why they are canon. You never mention Cloud and Aerith's relationship. It's weird. It's just as like there's nothing there and you just refuse to acknowledge it at all, and you can never talk about Cloud and Aerith's feelings together. So again, yes, Cloud and Tifa's relationship is important, but are they canon on a romantic level? No, they are not.